Hello and welcome to Cinecrisis. Television was changing in the early 1970s with the advent and the heyday of the made-for-TV movie. An early example of this trend and an important milestone for the format was the 1973 production The Blue Knight. I came across this movie on the Warner Archive collection, which specializes in releasing back catalog titles of oft-forgotten gems from the past, which sometimes aren't well known. The Blue Knight was a television production made for NBC Primetime that aired over 4 consecutive nights from November 11 to 14, 1973, and showcased Golden Age movie star William Holden as a veteran LAPD beat cop named Bumper Morgan. Holden, who had been the stars of such classics as Sunset Boulevard, Sabrina, and The Bridge on the River Kwai in the 1950s, was nearing the twilight of his career and somehow ended up in this television film. But the role really suits him, and having an actor of his caliber elevates the material more than anything else in the film. As I mentioned, The Blue Knight tells the story of Bumper Morgan, who after 20 years on the force is about to call it quits, get married, and settle down. But when the body of a brutally murdered prostitute is found on his beat, he gets roped up in the homicide investigation in a race to find the killer before his encroaching retirement date. Running at just over 3 hours long, The Blue Knight is a little hard to take in just one sitting and is best viewed either as originally intended as 4 separate episodes, or as I did in 2 90-minute blocks over 2 nights. I don't know if this movie is really for everyone, and it certainly is a little dated, but it definitely does have an audience for today out there if people are interested in either the later career of William Holden, or if they're fans of the television police procedural and want to revisit it in its infancy. But interestingly, when it comes to its approach to policing and community, it strikes a fearful symmetry that some of the same societal problems that were brewing in the 1970s are still as ripe today as ever, and I think that historical aspect of it was intriguing. The movie tackles topics like police brutality and defendants' rights with some quite spirited debates and an honest discussion, especially between the conservative Bumper Morgan and the more liberal university students he spars with. It's commentary on the cynicism and jadedness of not just aging in one particular career pathway, but also contemplating a life full of regret adds a deeper layer to the film's story. Bumper Morgan for sure is not a shallow character. We spend more than our fair share of time getting to know him, and by the end of 3 hours, we are fully invested in him. The movie really goes out of its way to show him as both a very flawed individual who makes some really morally questionable decisions, but still manages to have you root for him in the end. And I think most of, if not all of that, is due to William Holden and his inherent charm. The only real gripe I have with the movie is that by the end of the film, it did not really have a truly satisfying conclusion in terms of Morgan's journey, and wraps up several major plot points with endings that are seemingly random. Although after thinking about it more, it seems like this was intentional on the part of the writers to further suggest the utter randomness of life itself, and how life doesn't always work out the way we want to. This is especially apparent because the entire impetus of the film is predicated on a murder investigation that really feels like a red herring by the end of the movie, ironically. Also of note in the cast are Remick as Bumper's much younger girlfriend Cassie, Sam Elliott as a novice homicide cop who butts heads with Bumper, and Joe Santos from the Rockford Files as a fellow beat cop who tries to help Bumper out with some life advice. On a side note, although he was only 55 and playing 50, Holden looks very out of place with the lovely young Remick, who looks even younger than 38 at the time. The Blue Knight runs as a bridge between earlier police shows like Dragnet and Adam 12 to the more modern depictions of policing, highlighting the shades of gray on the individual characters on series like Hill Street Blues, and also gave birth to a television series of the same name, The Blue Knight, featuring George Kennedy, that lasted for 2 seasons on CBS. While other shows may have paved the way and later series made greater gains for the police procedural, I think The Blue Knight stands as an important and memorable rung in the ladder of the genre. Its depiction of a more human and flawed officer of the law, as played by one of the greatest actors of the Golden Age, give it a much-needed gravitas, and coupled with a very jazzy score by composer Nelson Riddle, I think it's worth a look for enthusiasts of the genre and those looking for great underrated 70s TV productions. And for that, I give The Blue Knight 3 stars out of 4. If you like this review, please subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, leave a comment below, and we will see you next time.